Hey, yo, what up? This is Mark from the Mark Digital Live podcast, produced by Feltzine. I just want to let y'all know, if you really want to support us and keep this shit going, please subscribe and rate this on Apple Podcasts. Like us on Spotify if you're listening on Spotify. If you're on Spotify, also just go ahead and search for Feltzine and find our playlist and like that shit too, so you can keep up with all these updates, the music, and the podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Feltzine. That's at Feltzine. You can also find us on Facebook with that same address, Feltzine. Facebook.com/Feltzine. However the fuck you use Facebook. Who even knows anymore? You can also please join our Discord. You can find the Discord link in any one of these podcasts. So if you're listening and you want to join the conversation, if you want to hear it live, if you just want to chat with us about shit, or if you want to ask us a question about the podcast or submit a question or a topic, just come through the Discord and do that. Join us over there. You could also find me at MarkDigitalHD on Twitter and Instagram. So go ahead and follow me there. And yo, thank you for listening. This is the Mark Digital Live podcast. Peace. One of the things that I've sat back and I've noticed lately is that hip hop is in a very interesting flux state. I think that this status is a little bit it's a little bit of kind of like a purgatory, in that, not in the sense that it's like not heaven or that it's hellish in some way, but I just mean that to say that there's no clear defined path right now. There's no archetype for what's a rapper or who's a rapper. Sometimes we're in these states where it's like you can look at someone doing something even if they don't rap and you know they're trying to be a rapper, right? In the 90s, if a nigga was rocking, like, you know what I'm saying, a Yankee fitted and mad baggy ass clothes, like that's what was happening, right? Up until a few years ago, if you've seen a kid who, you know, had on skinny jeans and some death metal t-shirt and you know, colorful dreads and shit, then you knew that nigga was trying to be a rapper, right? But now this shit is and that's not necessarily the case, right? Because some of the people who dress like what I just said, now some of them niggas is like considering themselves R&B singers. Now a lot of those kids, like, there's some rappers that look like that, but I mean, right now there's some rappers who look like everything. Like there's rappers right now that are popping, that are breaking all types of molds, that are breaking all types of stereotypes, and I think the game doesn't know what to do, right? So like before Nipsey died, he did this interview where he said he focuses on building a brand because anything could be a rapper. Anybody could be a rapper. That doesn't have clear defined steps. But building a brand has a blueprint that has defined steps. And I think that kind of is a very telling thing, that a rapper such as Nipsey Hussle, who has had success in the rap game, feels like the game is so different and changing right now that anything could work in hip-hop, right? Like Tekashi 6ix9ine works in this moment of hip-hop for a very specific reason, and that reason is because there's nothing that's clearly defined as to say he can't be in hip-hop for this reason, or he can't be a rapper for this reason, and that's kind of just what it is. I mean, someone like Action Bronson, who is a fat white dude with ginger fucking hair, blonde hair and shit. This nigga is one of the biggest stars, one of the most like lyrical niggas. He's the biggest underground rap personality, period. I don't even know if he could be considered underground, but his music is definitely in that underground, like, quote unquote real hip hop, whatever the fuck we want to call it. Like he's been doing songs with Rock Marciano, right? He was one of the first like big cats to really even embrace Westside Gunn and do that whole track with him. The respect that Bronson and the help that Bronson's given to people like The Alchemist, even down to Lorenovich, right? Mayhem Loren. Like, come on, fam. So I think when we see that as the fact that he's kind of what's big in underground hip hop, like a nigga who used to be a chef and shit, a nigga who got popping because he was talking about like food and playing with that shit in like mad lyrical, interesting ways. Like Bronson in himself is an enigma, right? The thing that makes Bronson like interesting is that he is so playful. He's very creative about the ways that he like puts his bars together and the shit that he comes up with to say. It's not just like straightforward. It's not like basic at all, right? And it's not it's not stereotypical. It's everything that's like very extra and strange and like super creative. And I think all of this and Mock Hami's the same way. People like Westside Gunn, of course, come to mind once again. People like Rome Streetz, who are being very lyrical, but are doing that in the most creative and I would even go as far as to say experimental way. And that's why I think when we start to look at who can possibly be like the leaders of what comes next, I think underground wise, we really have to take a look at Sadhu Gold. I've talked about his rapping before, and I've talked about how I've heard a good bit of it, and that kind of puts me in a position where a lot of the public is not. You know what I'm saying? Like he definitely has some projects that have been, I don't want to call them complete because I don't know if he calls them complete, but I would say that if he dropped them, they would definitely shake shit up, and they would have a lot of like underground hip hop heads. You know what I'm saying? Like it would be a nice album to add to the collection of very dope shit that's come out in the last couple years. Even this year, to be honest, we've had a great couple years for underground lyrical hip hop. So shouts out to Sadhu Gold for that, because I think that not only his sound, but I think his approach to music. And that's what we're going to start seeing. It's not going to be so much about a sound. It's going to be about your approach to music. Like Space Ghost Perp is so important because he really is the link, you could say, between bridging cloud rap to SoundCloud rap. Just that the names happen to be similar, but cloud rap was the precursor to SoundCloud rap, right? And I think Space Ghost Perp is the bridge, right? And in a way, like Space Ghost Perp is the bridge between Lil B and Playboi Carti. Like, and the thing about Space Ghost Perp is that it's not about whether or not he was creating a sound or borrowing a sound from 3 6 Mafia and the Memphis niggas. It's more about the fact that he had this approach to music. He had this approach that made ASAP hot. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this is what I mean. Like, I'm literally even saying Playboi Carti's, like, actual career. Like, Space Ghost Perp had the sound, and but he played with these sounds to create an approach. To say, hey, look, this sound that I'm playing with is crazy. No one's bringing it back to this Memphis lo-fi sound like I am. And then adding this spacey shit to it. These like faded out, like even more weeded out, like leaned out type sounds, pilled out type sounds. Then he went even further to be like, but not, it's my whole approach. It's the way that I'm going to record lo-fi. It's the way that I'm going to even present myself and carry myself through this game and like work with ASAP. And then also be like, yo, fuck ASAP. Like be able to be a counterculture kind of force to what's happening over there with that movement. So all that shit, even being rebellious in that way, right? In the way that a lot of, like, especially these young niggas in hip-hop are even, like, ultra rebellious against, like, everything. And just carry themselves with that vibe. That's Lil Uzi shit. You know, kind of being lyrical, but also, like, playing off this, like, these southern vibes and just going in. But also doing it in a way where you could be stylish and also androgynous. Right? So that's why I think in that realm, when we start to think about sounds now, it's also going to be hard to be like, yo, this is mainstream or this is underground or this is whatever. Mostly because it's going to be impossible to actually define that when you just are objectively looking at fan bases. Because people's followings don't necessarily mean that those are people that have come to your show. And people with, a 10,000, person following, if they're concentrated in the right areas, they can do tours that are, pretty much packed out and like really work. So the whole kind of and I've seen both, right? Like I've seen people who have huge followings not be able to bring in like people who have hundreds of thousands of followers not be able to bring in 100 people. But then I've seen people who have literally, 2,500 to 5,000 followers, and it would basically seem like every single one of their followers literally travels with them and follows them around like on some fucking like Grateful Dead shit. Like they some deadheads and shit, but it's for like some little ass nigga who's doing some crazy shit on SoundCloud, or you know, some like weird group who's just like popping on social media or something, and that shit really works, and they get to tour the world. Like that's how I ended up even going to Europe and touring Europe with you know, with DBSB, man, with Divine Council, because that sort of relationship, like, I mean, they had it popping enough where they could even have me come out, do the visuals for every show on a fucking European tour. Berlin, Paris, London. I did like 3 stops with them niggas. And this is not off of something that has hundreds of thousands of followers, right? This is something that just has a strong cult following. And these kids are really, really strong about this, like globally. Not just in this country, but globally. I think we're also at a point in hip hop where people are going to have to kill this whole narrative about just about like the fact that we can only have one woman who's popping at a time. Right now we have Cardi B doing her thing. I do think Cardi B is on the decline. I don't think that Cardi B is going to be popping. I mean, I think she'll be popping for a long time. I think she's doing the smart shit by doing this like rhythm and flow show and kind of going more in a direction where she could just fuck around and go back to reality shows and just like have a big celebrity. But I think as far as music's concerned, it's kind of out. She keeps trying to drop these like singles with big features, and none of them are hitting, like, really. And I think that they're just trying to make something out of her that she won't be. Like, she can make hood bangers, but maybe she's a little too popular now and disconnected from that life to make hood bangers. So, you know, if the ratchet chicks feel disconnected from her, which will probably happen pretty soon, then there's not really that much of an audience that's actually going to consume her music and even get it to have the numbers that she needs to have in order for people to continue to invest in her, because it costs a lot to have the writers that she has, and it costs a lot to get the beats that she gets. I mean, people are not fucking with her because they really think that she's, you know, musically gifted. People are fucking with her because she has a good brand and she has a good movement around her. But once that starts to wane, and once people realize, like, once whoever's backing it financially stops to recoup, which is going to happen before the decline in popularity, which has probably already happened, because you were talking about paying for music videos, etc., etc. Once that kind of runs dry, I don't know, I just think people won't really be interested in her music, but she'll continue to have whatever popularity she has. However, we do have a new player in the game, and Meg Thee Stallion is in here, and she's blowing up and she's doing her thing. In a lot of ways, I think Meg Thee Stallion is doing everything that Stefflon Don should have done. I don't know why Stefflon Don didn't pop like this. I guess it could be because she's British. I'll give her that. That is pretty difficult, but you know, I guess, like, in a way, my thing with Meg is that I think she can actually really spit, and I just hope. Well, actually, I think it's fine. She can spit. She has a really great look. People love it. I'm not gonna say anything negative about Meg. I want Meg to win. I had to take a moment. I took a moment to breathe and think about it, because I was trying to see if there was an angle where I could seem like maybe I wasn't just standing, where I could kind of be objective. But I just like what she does, and I'm actually pretty supportive of her, and I think it's interesting. So shouts out to Meg. It's not shit that I listen to, you know what I'm saying, just bump chilling, but it's chill, it's good. I mean, whatever, you know what I'm saying. People are calling Lizzo a rapper. If Lizzo's a rapper, then cool. We got Lizzo in the game. There's this girl who's on the come up. I think her Twitter handle is I Love Hook. I love, like, Luh though, Hook, Hook. I'm really fucking with Hook. She has a couple songs that I really think have an interesting vibe to it. She dropped this video that, I don't know, it kind of reminded me. Okay, so yeah, I Love You Hook. That's what it is. I Love You Hook. ILUH YOU Hook. The song Get Your Man Sis has really been popping on Twitter since like late September or something like that, mid-September. I'm really fucking with what she was doing. I think I heard it the day it came out. Definitely not like necessarily like the earliest adapter. She has less than 10K followers, so she's doing her thing, yo. I really want her to win. I really like the way I love Hook. You feel me? So shouts out to I Love You Hook. She's really sick. And I'm a big supporter of her music. She has like a style that reminded me a little bit of like a, you know, like a woman version of Playboi Carti, but she's mad original. I just say that just so that when people listen to it, they would understand why I like it, since I'm a huge Playboi Carti fan, as I mentioned a couple times on the show, and as I will continue to mention. I do want to say that I think this kind of unstable moment in hip hop does create really great opportunities like that, right? So we're shedding the idea that we can't have multiple women killing it in this game. We're doing great when it comes to that. I hope that this is a moment where queer rappers can shine even more. I really love what Cakes the Killer talks about, where he says there's this misconception that a lesbian woman can rap, but a gay man can't rap. And, you know, I never had that perspective before because I'm not gay, but once I heard that shit and he said it, I was like, yo, he's totally right. That's crazy. Like, let's switch this shit up. Let's fix this shit. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I had to check myself on that, because I definitely have been a fan of a lot of gay rappers, people like Mickey Blanco, and just other niggas. I never care about a rapper's sexuality, so I just think that, but I can see that other people definitely do. So I'm an ally in this fight. I think that I love that this is something that Cakes has taken up, and I think it's super dope. With that being said, I do think that people like Kanye, right? I think this is why we have an issue getting an album from Kanye West, and I think that Kanye would rather kind of drop a project, but drop a film, and also do these Sunday services, and maybe drop another album really soon, right? Like maybe he's gonna drop this this religious album, this gospel album, and then follow that up with Yandhi. We will see. I think that after listening to Yandhi, I think it's I liked it. I haven't listened to the gospel album yet, and I'm kind of not interested, which is really, really hard for me to say as someone who is a huge Kanye West fan, basically a Kanye stan. I'm damn near a Kanye disciple, but I actually don't want to hear him become super religious. I feel like Chance just did this and it was terrible. I'm sure there's going to be some beautiful, interesting moments on the album, because it's an album by Kanye West. It's a project by Kanye West. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be beautiful, but I'm just genuinely not interested in hearing this right now, and I won't be rushing to get the content. But who knows? Maybe someone will drop it on the Discord and I'll listen to that. But I think that's why you're even getting this kind of weird behavior from Kanye. Even think about it. Last time when he was dropping an album, he dropped a series of albums, right? He dropped his album, he dropped Pusha T's album, he dropped Kids See Ghosts, that's him and Kid Cudi. Then he dropped the Nas album, then he dropped Tiana Taylor's album. Like, and Kanye's someone who is definitely a forecaster and a predictor of trends when it comes to hip hop. So he realized that hip hop was going to change so much that even he decided that he had to just kind of scattershot this shit, throw everything on the wall, and be like, yo, what's gonna work? Let's see what happens. So that's pretty much the state that hip-hop is in right now. But I do think for new artists and new creatives, which is essentially what hip-hop is, in my opinion, I would say kind of has the real energy around. Like, great rappers can always come back and make masterpieces, and the older an artist gets, the better they get at their craft, of course. But the real crazy, interesting energy about hip-hop is the fact that there's always some kind of new, young, raw talent to be emergent that just, like, changes the way you think about the genre and changes the way you maybe thought about flows or styles or lyrics, and just is like, fuck, this is it. This is why I love this culture. And with that being said, that's happening more and more all the time, especially as we start to look at underground communities that are super strong, right? So even think about this is something that recently happened on a mainstream platform such as Rhythm and Flow, right? There was a kid who came on who was about this like demonic, like Gravedigger style of rap, right? Like he was really into the goth rap shit. And speaking of which, this is something that, once again, Space Ghost Perp helped to really pioneer on SoundCloud, right? So this whole goth rap thing, there's this kid who comes on who's like on his goth shit. He has like a baby doll head wrapped around his neck, like as a chain or some shit, on a chain, like, but he's rocking it as a necklace. Wild shit. And he even talks about being a part of the goth rap scene and shit like that. And Royce da 5'9" even says, yo, dude, like, this kid can rap, and he's also representing like a subculture, but he shouldn't even be competing on here. Niggas like you shouldn't even compete. And to be honest, that's probably the best compliment that was given on the show. Because when your style is so ill, or just when you're a part, not even, I wouldn't even say that his style was that ill. But like, when you represent a underground thing, when you represent something that has a cult community, it already makes you so much more cultured, right? Like, that's how I would start to think about the idea of cults and a cult following. Like, think of that shit as being cultured. Like, finish the word, you know what I'm saying? Like, he seems so much cultured and so much more cultured, and coming from such a much more thought out sensibility that Royce da 5'9" is like, bro, you shouldn't even compete. This isn't even for you. And honestly, like I said, to me and to free thinkers, that's like the best compliment you could get, especially when that's housed within a rap movement. So I want to kind of get into that more and more. I really want to kind of start to think about and dig up the connections between cloud rap and how that merged and became SoundCloud rap. And I'm going to be doing more research into that. I'm really inspired by that right now. And, I plan to do like maybe a couple episodes about that. Maybe an entire series about the history of how cloud rap became SoundCloud rap. And, SoundCloud rap essentially is what has gone to really kind of dictate what's also happening in the mainstream, because it has the lowest barriers to entry. And I think SoundCloud rap is, for me, as it stands now and as I do the research, maybe I'll even come up with a new term for that, right? Because I think when we also then just start to consider movements that just come from any sort of kind of like user-based sharing systems, we're getting some really interesting stuff. Like, I would love to even explore kind of like the things that people like Lord Fubu and Icy Twat are doing on like BeatStars, where they're just kind of making these fire-ass beats, turning them out, and actually selling them for prices that are actually really affordable to people, and they're actually getting some crazy, wild placements, and even working with people in the ASAP clan. So there's some interesting stuff to dig around and kind of think about as we start to just really dig deep into these different kind of rap movements that have kind of really bubbled up. And I'm really interested in the ones that come from the internet, because I think at this point we have enough Netflix documentaries about what was happening in hip hop, let's say prior to 2010. And I think it's so interesting that there's so much information about that shit, when truthfully, a lot of the things that are actually impacting us today happened within the last 10 years. And there's the least amount of information about that stuff. And it's kind of the stuff that's maybe also the easiest to be dismissed. So we're going to talk about that. And we'll see where we go from there. And I hope that I learn a lot. And I hope I'm able to bring something that's actually like interesting to y'all when it comes to that. The last point I just want to make right before I kind of sign off about the moment that we're in hip hop right now, and this kind of watery status, if you will. I want to say that I think this is what for me also makes Young Thug's album so much fun, so brilliant, and a really classic piece of hip hop, is because there's so many different sounds on that album. The fact that you can have an album these days that can be that long but also be that entertaining shows that he is a master of hip-hop. And it's so important that he's inspired by Lil Wayne, who was a rapper who was probably the forefather and, the godfather of this sort of era and this sort of change. Because Lil Wayne was such a rap weirdo who became so big and so mainstream that his impact and his influence could continue to bleed over and create a product such and inspire something such as Young Thug. And what Young Thug has done is taken that ethos and said, watch me master all types of hip hop. Watch me master the lyricism. Watch me master the crazy flows. Watch me master creating words and mumbling. Right? Watch me take this mumbling shit to just guttural sounds, and watch me flip it and just make this whole rap shit just everything, right? He's rapping about New York, and he's also rapping about the South and Cali. Like, he's blending all these styles. He's rapping about the world. He's rapping about international, foreign things from an Atlanta lens. Like, this album in itself is not only the African diaspora represented, but it's actually the whole global ethos represented through hip hop. And that type of situation and that type of output can only happen in the sort of hip hop world we have today, wherein there is no definition to what the sound is. That's the only way it doesn't sound like, some of these tracks sound a little outdated, or some of them just sound like not today, or some of them are just not hitting. When you start hearing people say that songs sound outdated, then you know we're back to being in a new era where we have a certain guideline and criteria. When you stop hearing words like that and you stop hearing terms like that, then you have to use that as a signal to say, oh, anything goes. Because right now, anything goes. So, to all my rappers and my artists out there, just take advantage of that and create from a real place. And you know what? Create as much as you can and get out as much dope, interesting, experimental stuff as you can before we get locked into something and it sounds out of date.